stick it up her.
Okay, now we should make a note here. Our Ryan Clark touched base with Micah's agent, David Mulligetta, yesterday, and he was told no such comment was ever made. Meanwhile, Micah scrubbed all Cowboys references from his social media pages, listing TBD as the first thing on his Instagram and X profiles. And Jera, he was not done, joining Stephen A. Smith on his podcast that was released today. Take a listen.
In the spirit of not doing the old mother-dad deal. How many times have you seen the little rascal so clever go in there and mama told him, you're not gonna get it. And goes in to daddy, who only sees him after 5 in the afternoon, wants to love him, and says, you can have it, son. You can have that before dinner. And he goes back in and says, mama, daddy said I could have it. That's the old mom, dad, been around since the beginning of time. I'm not going to go for that deal. That's what's happening.
You're not going for it?
I'm not going for it. There's right now about 3 entities involved in the Micah Parsons deal that really count, and that's not to dismiss everything about the organization and the Cowboys.
What are the 3 entities?
Micah, me, sitting out there, and about a mile back is that agent.
Whoa! Here's Bill Barnwell, Sam Acho, Jeremy Fowler, and Courtney Cronin. We had to bring in a huge group to talk about this. So I guess Jerry doesn't see the need for an agent, Courtney.
This whole mama-daddy analogy, and there's a child stuck in the middle of that being Micah Parsons. I would just like to know where the adult in the room is.
You think the child is Micah, or maybe it's Jerry?
I think the child is Micah because he's caught in the middle between the owner of the team, the guy who signs his check, and his agent, who he is collectively bargained and allowed to have as his representation. And the way that I see this, and the more that you listen to Jerry and the conversations that have apparently taken place about the two of them meeting, Jerry giving him a figure, saying he's going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. He doesn't do this for everybody. Respectfully, he's not doing it for the right guard. He's not doing it for the number 2 receiver. Micah Parsons is in his 1%. And Jerry views that as, this is rare territory. When it's rare territory, I'm the one stepping in and I'm the one negotiating directly with the player. And I think Micah looks at that and says, respectfully, I employ David Mulligetta, the most powerful agent in the NFL. That is who I want to do my business. And Jerry's offended by that. There's a lot of ego involved here. And he's poking the bear with a player who has stood on business before. Let's not forget, Micah Parsons sat out his senior season at Penn State to prepare for the NFL draft during COVID. And now he's strong-arming him and pushing him in that direction even further, it seems.
Maybe he's met his match. Bill?
Yeah, Courtney, the word ego certainly comes to mind. I feel that is the understatement of the year. There's a lot of egos involved in this discussion between those 3 parties. Micah Parsons is the latest in a series of Cowboys players Jerry Jones has waited to pay. He waited to pay Dak Prescott not once but twice. Waited to pay CeeDee Lamb until his 5th season in the NFL. Waited to pay now Micah Parsons into year 5. If he had got these deals done as early as possible after their 3rd season in the NFL, they would have saved about $82 million, maybe even more depending on where this Micah Parsons deal ends up coming in. And for that, he's gotten maybe a couple more appearances on NFL Live and the various ESPN programming. Jerry Jones is the most expensive piece of advertising this network has, and that is not to the Cowboys' credit. They need to get this deal done. The price is going to be what we expect. This is just a waste of time from Jerry Jones's perspective.
I actually disagree. I don't think it's a waste of time. I don't see this situation ending well for Micah Parsons or Jerry Jones. Really Micah Parsons ending up as a Dallas Cowboy this season. The reason why is this: Jerry Jones is one of the most stubborn, hard-headed individuals that I have ever met. I met him, I got a chance to negotiate collective bargaining agreements with him back in 2020 when there was a new deal. David Mulligetta is also a very confident individual. I've known David Mulligetta since college, right? I was being recruited by him. I've known him for 15 years, almost 2 decades. This is like one of those situations where you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And for Jerry Jones to try and say that the agent, David Mulligetta, who's negotiated over $1 billion of contracts, is a mile back, is a definite slight. Here's the deal. Micah Parsons is a pro at rushing the quarterback, at playing football. He may not be a pro at negotiating contracts. So he has employed an expert. So to try and extradite that expert from the conversation, I think is a mistake on Jerry Jones's part. I think that Jerry Jones has met his match, and it looks not very likely that Micah Parsons is going to continue this season, at least as a Cowboy.
The market has been set, as we can see. At best, it just seems unprofessional to leave an agent out of the equation. Meanwhile, he has asked for a trade. Any chance of that happening, Jeremy?
Yeah, Hannah, there is interest. I've checked with sources in Dallas. I was told multiple inquiries have come to the Cowboys about a potential trade for Micah Parsons. There would be several teams that would love to get a pass rusher like that with his age, production, premier player. I was told Dallas really doesn't have any plans on moving him unless it's some sort of just crazy, almost like a Herschel Walker type trade that they did 3 decades ago. It would take something like that. That's probably not coming. So reality will set in that they're going to have about 10 to 12 days before the season comes around to try to hash something out. I still, despite all this turmoil and everybody going through the playbook of how to create problems in negotiation, there is still time and optimism in Dallas that they can get something done in the next 10 to 12 days, possibly. But there are some feelings hurt there, so they would have a lot of ground.
And you remember the whole adult in the room thing. I have a lot of people asking, why isn't it the NFLPA? Why at this stage? To my understanding, the only way the NFLPA would get involved here is if Jerry Jones tried to go around Micah Parsons, tried to go circumvent the process and talk to a non-certified contract advisor, whether it be a lawyer, somebody that's not certified by the NFLPA. But it's interesting here when it comes to the other players, because obviously everybody around the league, players, are looking at Micah Parsons to see if he really is going to pull that card and he's going to sit out the opener against the Philadelphia Eagles, however long it takes. Because think about where the market was when Kirk Cousins in 2018 signs the fully guaranteed contract, first time we'd ever seen that in NFL history. What happened after that? The next quarterback in line didn't end up getting that same sort of deal. So people are wondering, can Micah actually get what he wants and then others follow suit? It could be a huge breakthrough for the rest of the league, especially his position, if he does stand on business in that respect and, truly not decide not to play in week 1.
Listen, if he decides to sit out, that's about $1.2 million fine per game, unless, of course, he's injured. That back starts hurting a little bit by carrying this burden. All right, coming up, some trade news this afternoon, as well as the Commanders officially moved on from Brian Robinson, sending him to San Francisco. This wasn't a surprise. We've been hearing talks about them dealing him for a few days now. Jeremy, what more can you tell us?
Well, they dealt him to the 49ers for a 6th-round pick. Washington is covering part of his $3 million and change salary. So here's how it's going to go for Washington. Austin Eckler will be their 3rd down back. They have the rookie, Bill Krosky-Merritt, that they're really impressed with. Everybody I check with there loves him. He's going to play a big role. But they also have Jeremy McNichols, Chris Rodriguez Jr. Checking with people there, they feel like all 4 will play in some capacity, that their backfield could look a little unconventional in that way until somebody emerges.
Meanwhile, we've seen Christian McCaffrey be injured. Not that anybody can replace him, but how do you like this move for the Niners, Bill, just to get some depth at that position?
I like it. It's real peace of mind for the Niners with their backfield. Now you have a back you can sub in for 10, 15 snaps a game early in there with Christian McCaffrey. And if McCaffrey goes down, we've seen Brian Robinson shoulder the majority of a starting workload. I know they have Isaac Guerrero, who's banged up. They liked him last year, but he's more of a home run hitter, not really as consistent between the tackles. Robinson can be that back on a 1-year deal. So obviously not a huge investment here from San Francisco's perspective. I like the deal. I like the fit. And I think it's going to be a situation where they might get a comp pick next year in free agency when he leaves. This could be really a free rental if things work out for the Niners.
Dart has played 4 drives in each of his 3 preseason games. That's 12 drives in total. He has been very clean. Nearly 8 yards per pass attempt. He has yet to throw a pick, has only been sacked twice. His 32 completions are the most this preseason by any quarterback without an interception. So we have that depth chart. We have Russ Wilson, Winston, Dart. What are you hearing from the Giants about their rookie?
I'm hearing the Dart's been eating a W all preseason. He has aced the process. He's a fast learner. He's highly motivated. When you talk to the people at the Giants, first thing they say, he's tough as insert expletive word. They love how tough he is. Even on that run where he didn't slide, they kind of admire that about him, even though they want him to slide. They love the mentality of the player. All that said, Russell Wilson's not going anywhere atop the depth chart. He's going to be playing week 1. That's the full expectation. But that leash could get shorter at some point. Dart has gotten a lot of second-team reps. The day I was there last week in a joint practice with the Jets, he was the number 2 guy in there. He was coming in the game after Wilson in most of the preseason action. So if something happens, he looks ready to step in. He has expedited the process.
Yeah, there's something he has that nobody else in that room has, and something you need in the Brian Daboll offense, and that's legs. And we saw it on that 23-yard scramble. Now, admittedly, you don't want to see him try to turn into, I don't know, Marshawn Lynch at the end of runs. Slide, please. But that is a thing that, going back to Jalen Hurts at Alabama, Josh Allen with the Bills, and then Daniel Jones that first year Daboll was with the Giants, they've always wanted their quarterbacks to be able to run, whether that be on the boot and naked game or whether it be with the scrambles like we saw there where they cleared out one side of the field and they tell Jackson Dart, hey, if you don't see it, there's going to be space for you, run into it. So that is a really easy way to create some opportunities for your quarterback, pick up some first downs if you protect yourself, a way to pick up first downs without having too much pressure on you. That's a real opportunity for this offense. It's something that I do think Jackson Dart, who averaged more than 30 scramble yards per game last year at school, is going to do when he eventually does get into the starting lineup.
And I hope that time comes later rather than sooner. Why do I say that? There is so much Jackson Dart hype, and understandably so. He's looked great in the preseason, but you have 25 years of quarterback experience in front of him that he would be adept to learn from. It'd be nice for him to actually take some time and not rush him into the starting lineup. Let Russell Wilson start. Keep Jameis Winston involved. I would even have Jameis Winston as the 2, and then let Jackson Dart throughout practice, throughout meetings, not just in the preseason, because the game of the speed of the game accelerates when you go from preseason to regular season. Let him soak up all that knowledge from 2 consummate pros that will extend his career. There's excitement about what Jackson Dart has been able to do, but I think for the longevity of his career, it's better for him to sit and simmer rather than throw him out and have him start quicker than later.
As long as they're winning, because there could be jobs on the line. And you forget, Patrick Mahomes sat that first year, they won 10 games, so they had that luxury. All right, we've got one rookie we know is going to start right away this season, Cam Ward, and another, essentially a rookie, J.J. McCarthy, as Lindsay Theory joins us now with more on the Titans. So how much should we expect Ward to play tonight?
Hannah, Cam Ward definitely will be out there tonight, Coach Brian Callahan saying, but it's still to be determined exactly how long he will remain on the field, and it's proven to be a fluid situation. Just last week, it was expected Cam Ward would play about 2 series. He actually went out there for a 3rd series just so he could get a few more plays off. Callahan says, though, at this point, he is encouraged by where his rookie quarterback is at. He says he's really doing well from an operation standpoint. As for how the rookie himself is feeling, Cam Ward says he feels really close to fully understanding this Titans offense and this playbook. He says the key right now is just to get some few more reps in there so we can really nail down and dial in on the scheme, the protections, and some route adjustments that may need to be made. Going into tonight, his main focus will be playing fast and getting in and out of the huddle. Hannah, our main focus is this band warming up right now.
Exactly. I was going to say, Lindsay, you are in mid-season form there, talking over the music. We appreciate you, as always. That's Lindsay Theory. Thank you. Meanwhile, we had a fun article from Bill Barnwell this week, taking a deep dive on some teams he thinks can improve on their win totals from last season. And one team he sees taking a big step forward is Jacksonville. Here's what Bill wrote. It was a 2024 season of losing coin flips for the Jags, who had 13 of their 17 games decided by 7 or fewer points. They went 1-3 and were outscored by a combined 86 points in the 4 games that weren't one-score contests, which doesn't exactly speak highly of what former coach Doug Peterson cooked up. But they were unlucky to finish with just 4 wins. So, gentlemen, Liam Cohen comes to town, hopefully to revitalize Trevor Lawrence's career as he did with Baker Mayfield. But, Bill, you point to something on the defensive side of the ball that you think could be a difference maker. What is it?
It's turnovers, something they forgot to have last year. It really was missing from them throughout the entire year. They had just 1 multi-takeaway game all of last season. That's tied for the fewest of any team in NFL history. And they noticed because they went out this offseason and they spent a lot of money and a lot of stuff on the secondary. They signed Eric Murray to play safety. They signed Jordan Lewis to a big deal to play at slot corner. And then the big move, of course, Travis Hunter, who comes in not only as an incredible coverage cornerback, but also we know special ball skills because, hey, he happens to play wide receiver when he's not playing cornerback. This team intercepted just 6 passes all of last year. Not only are they going to intercept more passes and help out the defense, that's going to help the offense, which inherited the worst average starting field position of any offense in football a year ago because they weren't getting short fields from those turnovers. So more takeaways, more interceptions, better defense, better offense, hopefully a better football team.
And the best thing to help a struggling offense is an offensive playmaker, a guy like Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is listed as a starter on the offensive side of the ball. He's listed as a backup on defense. Travis Hunter, you add him as one of the best wide receivers coming out of college. Add him to Brian Thomas, and all of a sudden you get Liam Cohen, an offensive mind. You don't have to rely on your defense to score points. You can add playmakers. De'Ami Brown's been added as well. And oh, by the way, there's conversation of Jacksonville being in the wide receiver market. Sean Payton just revealed it when they just traded Vele just not too long ago. So the best way for this offense to get better and to be less sporadic is to get more playmakers, which they have in Travis Hunter, and also what they're looking for when it comes to a few trades that may happen in the next few weeks.
They need Hunter on offense, they need him on defense, and they need him to stay healthy. It's as simple as that. All right.
I love to call myself a winner.
Opening drive for Caleb. It throws Zacchaeus caught to the end zone. Touchdown.
I want to win. I want to win for the Bears.
Touchdown Bears.
That I'm pushing towards excellence. Every play, every process, every snap count. I think as of right now, I think I'm rolling pretty smooth.
That's really well executed there by Caleb Williams. I have one goal, and it's win the Super Bowl.
Courtney Cronin is back with us. We're going to put her to work on her day job. All things Chicago Bears. What an encouraging performance by Caleb Williams in the preseason in week 2. What's the plan tonight against Kansas City?
Starters will play, to be determined for how long, but Kansas City starters are also going to play, so that means he goes against a starting defense for however long he's out there. And the big thing from Ben Johnson, pretty soon they're going to start condensing the playbook. They have been challenging Caleb Williams in ways that he has never had as a football player, playing within structure, long verbiage, a playbook that is immense, 12 different installs. Soon that gets pared down, but how do you play within the confines of this offense? Starting with getting the ball snap. There are still instances during Wednesday's practice where Caleb's breaking the huddle at 10 seconds. He tries to get to the line of scrimmage, realizes he has to kill the play. It's 2 seconds on the play clock. Can't get that off in time, delay of game. That's what they don't want to see, Hannah, because those were some of the pre-snap issues that have been occurring throughout training camp, especially early on. This late in the game, they want to see those mistakes cleaned up. They want to see a clean operation in terms of what he's doing when the ball actually is snapped, going under center, being in the shotgun, being able to deliver the ball with timing and anticipation, all the things that you saw against Buffalo, carrying over one more week in the final preseason game.
Yeah, what I want to see is how does Caleb Williams handle adversity? Last year he got sacked 68 times, and on many of those sacks you saw him on the ground, not really inspiring confidence. Sure, you can blame it on the offensive line. You can blame it on the former play callers. But what happens if you get sacked or take a couple losses or you go on a short losing streak? You can talk about winning all you want, but at the end of the day, the quarterback is the leader of the team. You need to be able to inspire confidence. And so when things go good, like you've seen in the preseason, yeah, it's all fine. But what happens when you go through a rough patch? What is your demeanor? How are you leading the guys around you? How do you get out of that time when you're not quote-unquote winning? That's what I'm most excited and eager to see from Caleb Williams this season.
And that's something that Sam brings up. They've worked on specifically with Caleb Williams, body language. When Ben Johnson got settled in at Hallis Hall, not long after, he and Caleb Williams are watching back tape from last year, being like, is this what we want to be? We don't want to be a palms up team. We don't want to give up body language that looks like a defeatist mindset. And
they've seen that before, by the way.
They've seen it in games.
Jay Cutler, I just keep thinking about him on the sideline.
But like the thing that Ryan Poles told me is that there aren't days in the building, even after tough practices, like we've talked about, there's been the couple steps forward, one step back. Even on those days where he has a bad practice, he's not sulking in the building. It's not an issue with him, and that's something that they've been very conscious to work on with Caleb.
Well, there's nowhere to turn. I mean, if it really begins and ends with Caleb, and they have the second hardest schedule in the NFL, so hopefully everybody will be very patient. All right, staying in the division. J.J. McCarthy will finally get on the field for the Vikings. He hasn't exactly had quality time with his top receivers, with Jordan Addison suspended for 3 games and Jalen Naylor with a hand injury. They were very happy to get Justin Jefferson back from a hamstring injury, but obviously this is the kind of injury they're going to have to continue to monitor. And as for Jefferson, he's now had 6 different quarterbacks throwing to him in his 5-year NFL career. Adding a 7th likely won't impact his production, though. He averages over 96 receiving yards per game for his career, the most in NFL history among over 3,400 pass catchers to play at least 50 games. Wow. So McCarthy's worked with 8 different receivers on the first team. Bill, what are the Vikings doing to support their young quarterback going into this season?
Well, a young quarterback's best friend outside of maybe Jameis Winston, based on the first segment, is running the football. And that is what I think the Vikings are going to lean into this year based on their offseason moves. Look at what they're telling us with their transactions. Well, they trade for Jordan Mason, who's going to help out Aaron Jones, and then they rebuild the interior of that offensive line. They sign Ryan Kelly and Will Fries away from the Colts. They use their first-round pick on Donovan Jackson. 3 new interior linemen around those excellent tackles in Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. This has been one of the most pass-happy teams in football on early downs over the last few years. Nothing wrong with that, but J.J. McCarthy's coming from an offense where, frankly, wasn't like he was Patrick Mahomes. They were running the ball a lot at Michigan, and he was throwing when they needed to. So running the ball more often, not putting it in 3rd and long, that's going to be a way the Vikings make his life easier in what really is his rookie season.
I just checked in with a source in Minnesota just to gauge. With all the injuries, I know we'll get into the receiver situation in a minute, but with all the injuries, how confident are you that J.J. McCarthy will be ready to execute this offense, to operate what needs to happen week 1? And I was told a 7. And for a number of different reasons, it's the short-term memory. People forget that in the game that he got injured in the preseason last year, he threw an interception, and then he finishes that game with a couple of different touchdown passes. So the short-term memory he's been able to display, whether it be in practice, going against that Brian Flores defense that he goes through every single day, turning that into a great joint practice against what's projected to be a top 10 defense with the New England Patriots last week. The pieces are in place. The verbiage is going to shrink. The playbook is going to shrink for J.J. McCarthy. But Hannah, Lucky Jackson, Deshaun Jones, Thayer Thomas, do any of those names ring a bell?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Those are the receivers that he was throwing to this past week.
Yes.
No one has taken a snap in an NFL game. It feels like they have to sign somebody.
What about that, Jeremy?
Yes, they have to sign somebody or trade for somebody, which I expect they will do in the next 3 or 4 days as roster cuts come. Adam Thielen, he's the name that is out there. There's a potential reunion on the books. Here's what I understand about the situation. The Vikings inquired to Carolina about Thielen early in the week, and then it was sort of quiet, but it's still out there as a possibility. The Panthers are not just going to give Thielen away. This is not a roster cut situation. He's really a part of their 3 receiver sets with the young players and Bryce Young. They like Thielen a lot. So they would have to come to some sort of agreement. He's due $6+ million in salary too. They'd have to figure out the money. So Minnesota's looking at other options as well, league-wide. They're talking to a lot of teams about the potential of adding a receiver. I do expect them to add one here soon.
Yeah, I mean, what a comforting guy for a young quarterback to have.
And he knows this offense. Let's not forget. I mean, Adam Thielen is the feel-good story in Minnesota. We both covered him at separate, different stints in Minnesota, and he's worked with J.J. McCarthy. They were a part of throwing sessions. It was C.J. Ham, T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen this offseason, so he already has that familiarity with his would-be pass catcher and red zone threat. Wouldn't it be good to have Adam Thielen down there and on top of Justin Jefferson as well?
Absolute money in the red zone. Bill?
Yeah, the Vikings did clear out $3.7 million in cash with the Harrison Phillips trade earlier this week. So I know Jerry mentioned that over $6 million base salary. Maybe that clears out some of the money to get that done. Maybe Carolina eats part of it to get a draft pick. They have some young receivers they like in Carolina as well. So clearing out some reps for someone like maybe a Jalen Coker would make sense. So kind of everyone could benefit here. We just have to sort of see if we can get everything over the finish line.
Yeah, Thielen would be a cool full circle story. Obviously, Jeremy's going to be all over that. All right, as we're moving on to some top stories with Jeremy. Jerry Jones has been making the round big time with media outlets in support of his new documentary. But of course, what everybody's asking about is his star, Micah Parsons, who has asked for a trade. And Jerry has not been shy on that subject. He feels that he and Micah had a deal. Jones sat down with Stephen A. in a podcast that releases today.
There's right now about 3 entities involved in the Micah Parsons deal that really count, and that's not to dismiss everything about the organization and the Cowboys.
What are the 3 entities?
Micah, me, sitting out there, and about a mile back is that agent.
Man, he's not only insulting his player, he's insulting one of the most powerful agents in the business, David Mulugheta. What's going on with this standoff?
Well, Hannah, Micah Parsons is in a precarious spot because he wants to be traded, but quietly he's getting ready for a season. I'm told that he's essentially doing 2-a-days on his own. He's lifting and he's running. He's in all the meetings. So there are people with the building who believe that he will be ready to play week 1 and that he will play week 1. If you ask around on the player side, you don't necessarily get the same answer, that he's pretty dug in. So something has to give. They got about 10 to 12 days to figure something out. They've gotten trade inquiries from other teams. Dallas right now, I'm told, is not inclined to move on and make a trade on Micah Parsons. They want to keep him. Next, we have Brian Robinson Jr. traded to the San Francisco 49ers for a 6th-round pick. The Washington Commanders will cover a portion of his $3+ million salary, so this helps both teams. 49ers were decimated by injuries at running back behind Christian McCaffrey. They get some much-needed help. Now Washington gets to crystallize their running back room. Austin Eckler, 3rd down back. They have a young rookie, Bill Krosky-Merritt, they really like. Some other veterans will get some looks as well, and sort of a by-committee approach of running back in Washington. And you got the QBs with the Saints. Big weekend for both Spencer Rattler, who you see there, and Tyler Shuck, the rookie. My sense after asking around the league is that Rattler could have a slight edge right now, but it has been pretty close enough to where Kellen Moore wants to see more. He needed to get through this week to be able to determine who his starter is going to be. But, Shuck has had some bright moments, so he's made a little bit of a move, and things are definitely in flux in New Orleans, but they're going to have a new signal caller regardless. They're still trying to sort all that out through the weekend.
Yeah, and if they don't sort it out this season, there's always the quarterback-heavy draft coming up, which a lot of folks there are focused on. The guy who came off the couch and led him to the playoffs a couple years ago, Joe Flacco. The 40-year-old will be the starter in Cleveland. Who his backup is, though, that remains to be seen. Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders will each get reps in their final preseason game. Sanders says he's ready for anything.
I don't care. Whenever it's time for me to get out there and play, I'm going to play. Whenever it's time for the lights to come on, I'm going to do my thing. I'm not concerned about when it is. I'm not concerned about, how many reps I'm getting at this point is what it is. Because I know when the lights come on, when everything's going, when the pressure's on, you know who I am. And I'm always be that way.
Meanwhile, Kenny Pickett's still dealing with a hamstring injury. He hasn't seen any preseason action. What are you hearing about that quarterback room there in Cleveland?
Yeah, so the Browns are trying to figure out whether they're going to keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster or roster cuts looming. I know that they do not plan to trade Dillon Gabriel, that's for sure. They also don't plan to trade Shedeur Sanders. They like the rookies and what they've done so far. It looks like they want to continue to develop both. So the question is, what do they do with Kenny Pickett, who's been out most of camp? They liked what he was doing before he got hurt. So they're trying to sort all this out. They are open-minded about keeping 4 on the roster, which is somewhat rare, but they've done before in Cleveland. They're going to go from there. So you'll see this weekend Joe Flacco probably playing about 20 to 25 snaps, then Dillon Gabriel, then Shedeur Sanders. Gabriel has had the edge on Sanders so far.
Yeah, even though he had a couple of turnovers in his last preseason game, Courtney.
Yeah, to Jeremy's point, there's no incentive for Cleveland to get rid of any of these quarterbacks until they absolutely have to. But that's why this weekend matters so much, and next week's practice matters so much. This quarterback 2 battle is going to go all the way up until week 1 based on what we haven't seen from these guys. There hasn't been one of these young quarterbacks go up and grab that role. Dillon Gabriel last week, some good 3rd down throws, but then the pick 6 that he threw.
And a fumble.
Shedeur Sanders, the first preseason game against Carolina, has a great performance, and then he has the oblique injury. So all of that good momentum seems to go away just because of the time that he's missed. So for these 2 quarterbacks and the opportunity that they have, as Jeremy pointed out, Dillon Gabriel will get the snaps right behind Joe Flacco, and then it will be Shedeur Sanders. This game goes a really long way in determining the pecking order.
Yeah, we're running out of time here. Sam, what are you going to be looking at when you're assessing the 2 rookies?
I'll be looking for more of the wow throws that we saw from Shedeur Sanders earlier in the preseason. There are a couple of throws that were not rookie-type throws or, hey, I'm trying to figure it out throws. Those were NFL-caliber throws. That touchdown that he had rolling out to the left in the end zone. Also, some of the one-handed catches that you saw. These are like jump off the screen type of throws. That's what I'm looking for from Shedeur. From Dillon Gabriel, I'm looking for him to take away those turnovers. You're going against the 2s and the 3s, and though Dillon Gabriel looks sharp, if you're evaluating him, you're going to look at the pick 6 and look at the fumble. So if he could reduce some of those and still shine against 2s and 3s, that'll help elevate him. But for Shedeur, keep the ball clean, use your legs, and then let those throws jump off the screen like you did earlier in the preseason.
Right, trying to not have those turnovers. Courtney, it was great being with you today. Thanks to Courtney Cronin for being with us. And in case you missed it, the Colts named Daniel Jones the starter in Indy, beating out Anthony Richardson. Now, Shane Steichen gave his reasoning on the decision this week.
Look, he's our starting quarterback for the season. You know, I don't want to have a quick leash on that. I feel confident in his abilities. I think consistency, operation, moving the ball, being consistent on a daily basis. I think Daniel Jones, you know, has done that. I think, you know, that year they went to the playoffs. You know, he was one game away from an NFC Championship game and making the right decisions, and his completion percentage, I think that keeps us on track. So that's a big part of it. Obviously, you want to see the big plays. I think Daniel Jones is capable of that as well.
So, Jeremy, is he done? Should we actually be looking for an Anthony Richardson trade? He out of Indy?
Hannah, here's why I won't take that off the table.
Okay.
Derek Jackson, who's the agent for Anthony Richardson, is supposed to meet with the Colts and Chris Ballard, the GM, at some point next week. What comes of that meeting could determine a lot, because this is a player that's frustrated, not only frustrated, but wants to play. He knows he needs to play. He hasn't had a lot of reps, even dating back to high school. He feels like he needs to be on the field. He feels like he answered the bell at camp, had a good camp, answered the questions that they had about his leadership and his work ethic, did all those things. Now he has this frustration and has to figure out something to do with it. I had a great quote from an AFC exec today I was talking to. They said, put him on the Eagles and let him play a little bit. One read, run the ball. Like, he's still probably the most athletic quarterback in the entire league despite the inexperience. So people around the league are sort of toying with the idea of him being on another team. He wouldn't have huge trade value because the production's out there, but he would have value.
Wow, I mean, to go from Indy to the Eagles, that would be quite a move, even with limited play.
Not that they need it, but that's, he would have to go somewhere, almost like Trey Lance did a couple years ago.
Exactly.
Rebuild his career a little bit.
Right. Some sneaky big news out of Atlanta, by the way, this week, where Michael Penix Jr. could be without his blindside protection to start the season. Jeremy, you were all over this story, posting Falcons right tackle Caleb McGarry will miss time on the apparent leg injury suffered Wednesday, per source, who added the exact timetable is not immediately known, but for now he's out of the lineup. And I mean, Bill, you've got ankle surgery for Storm Norton, your backup tackle. He's expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. So how concerned are you about this Falcons O-line?
This is a nightmare scenario for the Atlanta Falcons. It's like you said, right tackle means more to them than just about any other team in football because their quarterback, Michael Penix, is left-handed. So that means now his blind side has their top 2 options off the table. Elijah Wilkinson was getting some reps there. They could call, you know, the Texans about Trent Brown or maybe the Chiefs about Wanya Morris, but suddenly that spot is now a incredibly weak part of your offensive line, protecting your inexperienced young quarterback as he enters in his first full season as the starter. A lot of quarterbacks don't like to throw hot off their blind side, so you can do more with your front side. You can kind of shield your protections that way, do what you can to protect him, and then let the quarterback see the pressure coming from the front side, but it is totally different from your blind side. So this is a very difficult scenario the Falcons are going to have to deal with for what might be a couple months here, depending on what happens with Caleb McGarry's testing.
And all of this under the prism of not having made the playoffs since 27.